The world's financial community is watching this man very closely today. He's the Minister of Finance for Cyprus. The country is just days away from bankruptcy. He says Cyprus is making good progress with European bankers and politicians for a bailout. We could find out soon if it will get financial help. EU finance ministers will meet to discuss the country's economic problems tomorrow. Our next guest has been following the chaos in Cyprus all week long. Patrick Young is an international markets analyst, and he joins us now by phone from Torun, Poland. So, Patrick, we're hearing that the president of Cyprus is now headed to Brussels, and people are talking about some cause for a bit of optimism. Why might there be optimism right now?
Well, I think the most obvious reason, Nancy, is that he probably wouldn't have boarded a flight to spend 2.5 hours of his life heading to Brussels if he didn't have some sort of coherent plan. And I think also we have to say that last night in the Cypriot Parliament, there were actually some good moves of progress. They've agreed on certain aspects of restructuring parts of their banks, etc., that would suggest there is a possibility that a deal's going to happen. Although, again, I have to caution that typically what happens in the sort of soap opera of bailout politics in the European Union is we're all incredibly optimistic by Saturday evening, and then we seem to go through a very, very long and depressing Sunday before finally we hope that they eke out a deal probably tomorrow evening.
Okay, the next 48 hours, as you say, could be pretty manic. What do we know about this very controversial attacks or trying to actually get at individual bank accounts and deposits? That was so roundly rejected earlier this week, but it does appear to be back on the table in some variation.
Oh, absolutely. Well, look, this has been absolutely a catastrophe, I think, actually, in the long run for the euro and euro governance, because what happened was, over the course of bailout politics for several years, there's always been this mantra that 100,000 euros of deposits would be safe for every depositor, no matter where they banked in the Eurozone. And then suddenly last weekend, we had this Cypriot deal come out, and we were expecting to see smaller depositors, those with up to 100,000 euros, losing a percentage of their assets. I mean, simply having it effectively confiscated it. And now, that problem of confiscation, however you want to regard it as a tax, caused a massive backlash across the European Union during the course of the week, and also in Cyprus, where they weren't able to pass the vote per se. This has led us to now what we think is going to be some sort of renewed attack on depositors above the 100,000 euro schedule. But at the same time, it still seems remarkably unfair that it's savers who are having to pay for this bailout, and the bondholders, the people who've bought debt of the government and the banks and so on, are actually being saved. So individuals, if they've got more money, are losing money here, we think, in the current proposals, whereas at the same time the large corporates aren't being touched at all.
So, Patrick, I mean, we've never heard of that kind of an option being discussed in Greece, Portugal, Spain. Is Cyprus a special case? Is there a reason that that kind of punitive, harsh option would be taken seriously?
Well, there are several reasons why. The first reason is clearly because Cyprus is an incredibly small country, and there's only 1.1 million Cypriots against 300 million people in the rest of the European Union. The second point is also politics. We're seeing an increasingly harsh political environment in, say, places like Germany that has elections coming up in September, also Finland and Holland and other northern European countries who are feeling very much fed up at the idea that they are the lenders of last resort to all of these different people in the Mediterranean. There is a remarkable north-south split, therefore. Also, we've got a problem because the Cypriot problem is quite unique insofar as their banks are huge, pro-rata to their economy. And therefore, we're looking at the idea that essentially there could be a 10 or 20 billion euro hole, looking at it one way or another, in terms of how solvent the banks are. And when you divide that between 1 million people, it's incredibly difficult to get the numbers to match up.
Okay, well, we'll certainly watch the next few hours very closely. Patrick, thanks very much for your read on all of this.
You're welcome.
Patrick Young in Torun, Poland.